In this part, we get like Tamari's reaction, I guess, and Tsunade comes back to the village. Also, when we hit 9,000 subscribers, I will upload an hour what if of your choosing when we hit 9,000 or right before we hit 9,000. I'll make a poll. So make sure you keep an eye on the community tab. I'm really active on there. Let's get into the video. Roll the intro.
And today thinking myself
Tamari blinked and blinked again and again. Her thoughts drifted back to her hot makeout session with the blonde in the alley. She didn't realize it, but her face was slowly turning red enough to give Gaara's hair a run for its money. Baki frowned in concern. Tamari? I see. I have a lot to think about, Sensei. I'll see you later. Completely unlike her, Tamari turned and hastily walked away, leaving a confused audience behind her. Baki had a puzzled expression. Tamari never acted like this before, but then again, this situation is a first for her, so this might have prompted a new response as well. He turned to the other two. You two are dismissed as well. You best leave her alone for a while. This is a very big and sudden decision she has been forced to agree to. It's best if she gathers her thoughts for a while. With that, Baki left. Gaara turned to Kankuro, a very rare, confused expression on his face. Kankuro, do you know why Nissan left? Kankuro shrugged in confusion. Even I don't know, Gaara. You can never know what's going on in a woman's head. Tamari hastily made her way to the training ground that was reserved only for the Kazekages. However, as the children of a Kage, they got access to it without any problem. She made her way to her favorite spot on the lowest branch of one of the few trees that were in the training grounds. She climbed onto the branch and finally let out the giggles she had been keeping inside her. It's so unreal. I mean, what are the odds? I never imagined that this would happen. The giggles receded and a soft smile took its place as she gazed at the setting sun. She still couldn't wrap her head around it. She was going to get married to Naruto of all people. The same Naruto who she had feelings for, and had only grown from the time she had come back to Suna. In all honesty, she never thought that she could form a relationship with him as much as she wanted to, and she pretty much believed that he thought the same. She was of Suna and he was of Konoha, but it was almost as if the universe wanted to prove them both wrong, but for good. Then the confusion and hesitance hit her, with a pinch of insecurity. Was she really ready to get married? No. Granted, she did have, dare she say, strong feelings for the blonde, but were they strong enough that she could happily live with him as a permanent partner? She didn't know that. Was she ready to make this sort of commitment so early in her life? Her feelings for Naruto and her duty as a Konoichi of her village were making her thoughts nothing less than a mess. Would Naruto be happy that he would have to spend his whole life bonded to her as her husband? What if he wasn't happy? She groaned as she rubbed her head, trying to make some sense out of the mess that was her mind. In an attempt to block out the incoming headache, she diverted the train of thought to the political implications of the marriage. She was the daughter of the Yondaime Kazekage, and Naruto was the only son of the Yondaime Hokage, arguably the most dangerous man the Leaf had ever produced. And it was clear as drinking water that Naruto was well on his way to claim that title for himself. The marriage between two children of two Kages was sure an effective way to cement an alliance between two villages. Not only that, but her interest in Naruto had led her to attempt to study his background when she was back in Suna. Shocked was an understatement to say the least. She had known that Naruto went by the surname of Uzumaki, so she searched that first. Interestingly, that was the name of the clan that was cousins with the legendary Senju clan and allies of Konoha. The Uzumaki clan lived in Uzushigakure no Sato, the land hidden in the whirlpools, but it was wiped out in the last war, with the combined efforts of Kumo and Iwa. But apparently there was a survivor who made it to Konoha and married the Yondaime to give birth to Naruto. Of course, since there was only one survivor, the clan was then given a seat in the council as a gesture of the friendship they used to have with the village, which meant that Naruto was now the sole heir of the Uzumaki clan, soon to be head, because of undoubtedly making Chunin. Another shocking fact was that Naruto was the head of 2 clans, not 1. It was no secret that the person who becomes a Kage, his name is automatically granted clan status. In essence, Naruto was the soon-to-be head of Namikaze clan as well. He would become a very powerful figure in the village politics, with 2 clan seats backing him. That was a lot of power and responsibility for a single person. She thought with some relief that he would have her to share the responsibilities. He wouldn't have to be alone in that. Finally, her thoughts took a turn that was long coming. Her face turned red as she suddenly thought about the implications of her marriage to Naruto. More specifically, what they have to do on their wedding night. Tamari's entire face went the shade of Gaara's hair red. She recalled what they had done in the alley that night, her and Naruto. The place his hand had touched. She let out an embarrassed squeal as she put her face in her hands. Why was she getting so embarrassed? It didn't make any sense. In the end, her thoughts came to this. While she was happy that she was getting married to someone like Naruto and not some snob like the Uchiha, she wanted to see if the bond that was there between them had the potential to grow stronger or not, whether both of them were truly capable of loving each other or not. And she wouldn't say no to any more naughty things that happened between them along the way. That helped reinforce that bond. Nope, not at all. Tsunade watched with amusement, so did Shizune, as both Naruto and Jiraiya quarreled like children. This was the first time she was seeing Naruto get so heated in an argument so childish such as this. This is lame, mind you. You're always going on and on and on about how you're such an awesome shinobi, and yet you got nailed by her perverted attack, you arrow senin. Urai Sai. The two of them were literally butting heads, teeth grounding audibly. Naruto was the first to back off, a smirk on his face. It felt good to act childish once in a while, especially when he is making fun of his perverted godfather. You know I'm right, Arrow Senin. You know, Naruto, that's quite an apt nickname for Jiraiya, Tsunade chuckled in mirth. Jiraiya's head instantly dropped in depression. Naruto nodded graciously. In all honesty, I can't speak. In all honesty, I never really thought about it. It simply came out of my mouth at the moment. The journey back to Konoha had been covered in a very high spirit. Tsunade finally had an air around her that felt like the Hokage she was about to become. Soon enough, the gates of Konoha came within their sight, the size of an ant. Jiraiya scoffed. You people have no respect for me. He received 3 deadpan stares at the same time, causing him to chuckle nervously as he rubbed the back of his head. Naruto turned his head away, spotting the gates of Konoha in the distance. All of a sudden, a thought popped into his head, causing him to grin challengingly. Both Tsunade and Shizune noticed the grin, and knew a devious thought had just taken root in the crazy mind of Uzumaki Naruto. Hey Arrow Senin! The call caused Jiraiya to almost cry at him in indigenous, but stopped when he noticed the grin on that face. What's on your mind, Gaki? Naruto pointed his index finger in the direction of the gates. You can see them, right? The 3 of them had to squint a little, but nodded for a moment. We've reached. What about it? Naruto's smirk could have put almost every Anbu in Konoha on alert. Care for a race? Just you and me. Jiraiya laughed wholeheartedly and said, Brat, you're 100 years too young to even challenge the likes of me. But then he added with a cocky smile, but I wouldn't mind showing you just how inferior you are. Excuse me, an irritated voice cut into their challenge, and both turned to face an annoyed Tsunade, her right hand cocked in her hip and foot tapping the ground in irritation. Shizune simply stood behind her, not knowing what to do. I hope you weren't planning to forget that we're here too. Naruto's face suddenly changed into a completely innocent expression, something that caused Tsunade to stiffen in guard. She rather preferred his devious expression rather than this. At least that look suited him. This look almost had her convinced that Naruto was a completely innocent boy. Oh no, not at all, Naruto denied with a shake of his head. And I lost where I was. Okay. Shake of his head as he took off his backpack, holding it out to Tsunade, who raised an eyebrow in question. Naruto just put his hand forward. Just hold it for a second, please. Tsunade begrudgingly took the backpack and slung it over her right shoulder, only because the brat said please though. She was confused when Naruto then walked around her so that he was standing right behind her and Shizune. You're a part of this race as well, in fact. He slung his hand over the shoulder of them both. You both are the referees. With that, he flashed them to the marker he put on the gates of Konoha. Naruto turned to Jiraiya, who shook his head and said, Tsunade will beat you into the ground for not warning her. Naruto waved dismissively. She won't, even if she attempts to do that. She's way too slow to catch someone as fast as me. Also, a shinobi must always be on guard. Jiraiya snorted but said nothing. He liked this characteristic of Naruto. The kid didn't give a dang about who wanted to beat him and had the balls and skills to pull off such a stunt. He picked up a pebble and bounced it in his hands. You ready? Naruto came to stand beside him, having deactivated the resistance seals for this. Ready where you are. Jiraiya flicked his finger, sending the pebble flying into the air. They both tensed as it neared the ground, and as soon as it touched the ground, they both disappeared. Tsunade and Shizune blinked as they suddenly found themselves standing right in front of the Konoha gates. The gate guards, Izumo and Kotetsu, blinked in shock as they found themselves suddenly staring at one of the legendary figures of Konoha. Senju Tsunade was not only considered the strongest kunoichi in the elemental nations, but also the most beautiful as well. And right now, they found themselves scared, for her beautiful face was angry as anything. Tsunade clenched her fist and snarled, That brat didn't even give me a warning and forcing me into this petty race. However, her rant was cut off as two dust clouds rapidly made their way to her position. Remembering why Naruto had sent her here like this, she grudgingly kept an eye on them, ready to see who was the winner. Both figures shot past her right into the village, leaving a surprised Tsunade and Shizune. They both seen who was the winner, of course. There was a little doubt. Jiraiya huffed as he tried to catch his breath, looking at an equally huffing Naruto. The brat had almost beat him. His reflexes were scary as ever, for Naruto had dashed as soon as the stone was a millimeter above the ground, with Jiraiya immediately dashing after. If not for the flex of his chakra near the end, he would have totally lost. Would you look at that? Jiraiya almost lost to a 13-year-old boy. Both of them turned to see a smirking Tsunade walking up to them. Carelessly throwing Naruto's bag at him, Jiraiya looked away petulantly. But I didn't. Also, I was carrying extra luggage. Naruto slung his bag. I will concede to my defeat. You're better than me, Arasenin, for now at least. Jiraiya triumphant smirk faltered at the end of Naruto's sentence. Of course he planned on taking the brat on a training trip some time later, and he had no doubts that Naruto would surpass him. Naruto faced the three of them. Alright, my mission is finished over here. I'll report tomorrow morning for debriefing, Bachan. Enjoy your walk of fame, Hokage-sama, he added, teasingly before disappearing in a flash. Tsunade's eyes twitched in irritation, before a small smile of fondness came into her view. He may look like his father, and even act like him most of the time, but he sure has his mother's moments as well. With that, they made their way to the Hokage Tower. Naruto wasn't wrong. People were not discreet at all when they saw two of the Sannin walking together, one of which had returned from an absence of almost a decade and a half. Tsunade found herself smiling against her will as she gazed upon the home of her precious people once again. People were smiling relief after seeing two powerful shinobi of Konoha walking through the streets. Things were still a bit shaky amongst the civilians, but Tsunade's appearance might cause them to settle back down, Jiraiya mused. As they reached towards the Hokage's tower and in a few minutes the Hokage's office, Tsunade found herself having an epiphany. It hit her that she really had missed her sensei. Jiraiya saw this and allowed her a few moments to collect herself. Tsunade took a few deep breaths to calm herself down. When she was ready, she raised a slightly shaking hand and knocked the door 3 times. Enter, the same raspy old voice that she had heard once since she had not heard since her beginning days, full of wisdom, gave the command. Tsunade opened the door and was greeted with what she should have expected, but still filled her with a strange amount of relief and nostalgia. Sarutobi Hiruzen was sitting at the Hokage's desk, doing paperwork. His eyes lifted up and widened in his surprise. He slowly put down his writing brush and stood up, never wavering his eyes from Tsunade. When he spoke, his voice conveyed suffering and relief at the same time. Tsunade! Tsunade herself was finding it hard to rein in her tears. It hurt her once again. If it hadn't been for Naruto, Hiruzen would not have been standing here right now. He would either have been in a hospital or worse, buried in a grave, 6 feet under the ground. I'm back, sensei, Tsunade said as she gave the old man a watery smile. It seemed that she had missed him more than she thought. Sarutobi was more than just a sensei to her. He had been more like a father to all of her team. He nurtured them with his own 2 hands. He might have been tough as heck sometimes, but at the end of the day, he treated the team like his own children. To her surprise, he laughed hard, and Jiraiya and the Anbu in the room stared open-mouthed, for that was the heartiest laugh they had heard from the Hokage in years. Finally, when he stopped laughing, he said, I'm so happy to see you back, Tsunade. He gave the signal to his guard to give them some privacy. Once they left, he sealed the room completely. He then walked around the table and pulled out his secret stash of sake from the fake compartment in his drawer. He took out 3 cups and poured all of them a drink. He winked as he handed them sake. I normally restrain myself, but I believe this occasion calls for some celebration. Tsunade smirked as she took her cup, followed by Jiraiya. They clinked their cups together and drank it all in one gulp, with Tsunade giving it an approving nod. Nice sake. Hiruzen smirked. Being Hokage has privileges, you know. Jiraiya sighed happily as he refilled and drank once again. I should have invited the Gaki to drink with us, after all. He winked at his teammate. He performed his first S-rank mission quite impressively. Hiruzen made a sound of realization. Ah yes, we should have called him, to celebrate his first successful mission as a Jonin. That too, S-rank. I knew I made a correct choice in promoting him. I want your report on this, Jiraiya. I know Naruto will reach me tomorrow. Jiraiya nodded. Will do, sensei. Tsunade frowned. How do you know that his report will reach you tomorrow? He said that in front of us, not you. Hiruzen smiled. It has been his habit ever since he started doing missions. He always gives in his report a day after the mission is complete. A very peculiar habit though, if I do say so myself. I never quite found out the reason why. He walked around his table. However, he has been very consistent, so I have no reason to doubt that he wouldn't deliver it tomorrow morning. Before they could continue catching up and discussing about Naruto, there was a knock at the door. All 3 of them gave the door an annoyed look, before Sarutobi put his sake away, sitting back on his chair. Tsunade and Jiraiya stood in front of his desk, as there was no chairs for them to sit on. Hiruzen unsealed the privacy seal and called his Anbu back. Once they were back in their positions, he gave the order. Enter! Hiruzen and Jiraiya were able to keep their faces blank. However, Tsunade's tongue soured as she took in the arrival. The elders, Homaru and Koharu, had been her least favorite people when she was a genin, and tuning under her sensei. She schooled her expression as they bowed to her. Welcome back, Tsunade-sama, they bowed. Even though the respect was shown, she still considered them highly annoying. A pair of old senile fools, completely set on their ways of thinking. They were also quite assertive, wanting their opinion to be the only decision there is, despite of them only being advisors to the Hokage. They also believed that they knew best. If she remembered correctly, she would have to talk to Sensei about doing something about them. They should have retired quite some time ago. They looked above from their bow and turned their attention to the Hokage, completely ignoring the other Sanin in the room. Of course, Jiraiya had no problem in returning the favor. He never liked them in the first place, and they fell from his eyes even more when he heard from Hiruzen just how vocal they had been against Naruto's promotion to Chunin, let alone Jonin, if he was deserving. Even if he was deserving. Hokage-sama, now that Tsunade-sama is here, perhaps we should brief her on the recent happenings and news from Tsunagakure. Homaru's suggestion earned a nod from Hiruzen and a questioning eyebrow from Jiraiya and Tsunade. Hiruzen took out a scroll from his drawer and handed it to his successor. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this, Tsunade. Jiraiya moved closer to Tsunade to read over the content of the scroll. Both their eyes rose in surprise and incredulity as they finished reading it. Shocked looks were sent to the old Hokage, who sighed and said, I have already given my approval to this. They made an offer that would have been otherwise foolish to refuse. Jiraiya pulled Tsunade to the side to whisper to her, This is ridiculous. They can't do that to the clan head, can they? Tsunade's eyes widened a bit at that. She had forgotten that after becoming Jonin, Naruto had essentially became clan head to Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. In all but official capacity, she grudgingly said. He hasn't been officially appointed as such and has yet to take his seat at the council. This wouldn't have been possible if he had been clan head in official capacity without his permission. But since he's not, it could be. Sorry, he's been done. He can't refuse the order of the Hokage, Jiraiya. Jiraiya frowned, obviously not liking the notion that his sensei dictated the life of his godson like this. Naruto would now have to marry someone from another village for his duty. He would never get a shot at love on his own. But like Tsunade said, Naruto was not in any capacity to refuse. Tsunade did not like this as well. She had slowly taken a liking to Naruto on their way back to Konoha, and she saw what kind of a person Naruto was. He did not deserve to be treated like this. She racked her brain, trying to see the positive side to this. After a few moments, a stray thought caused her to back up and a smile formed on her face. She faced the Hokage and the elders. The full council has agreed to this. Hiruzen nodded an affirmative. The elders nodded as well. Yes. Her smile turned into a small grin. She needed to double check if her sensei had thought this through from all angles or not, before making his decision. Does the council also believe that Suno is aware of Naruto's heritage? Hiruzen frowned and looked at Jiraiya in confusion, who cursed mentally and gave him an apologetic look. He turned back to Tsunade. It seems that Jiraiya forgot to tell you what happened in the Chunin exam, Tsunade. Naruto publicly announced his heritage. It is safe to assume by now, all the elemental nations know just who Naruto is. Tsunade gave an annoyed look to Jiraiya, who rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Deciding that she would deal with them later, she asked them for her next question. Then am I to assume that the council has also thought about the domestic ramifications of Naruto's marriage? Her grin widened when a look of confusion passed among the elders, Jiraiya and her sensei. However, Sarutobi's eyes widened as he caught onto the meaning of her question, and an expression passed over his face as he viciously cursed himself for not thinking about this sooner. But then a grin passed over his face when he realized what it meant for Naruto. Jiraiya was a little slow to catch up, but then too grinned when he came to the same realization as her and sensei. The elders still hadn't caught up to them. Koharu spoke for them both. We're not sure what you mean, Tsunade-sama. With a smirk worthy to match Naruto's deviousness, she explained. When Naruto marries, he will officially have claimed his position as the head of both Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, meaning he will inherit everything from both of those clans, including funds, property, and land in those clans' possessions. That also includes the seats of them both on the council. Surely you realized this before sending the reply. The face of both the elders had dropped in dismay. They never realized that by marrying off Naruto, they were pushing for him to become a clan head for two clans. How could they have overlooked something as important as this? Hiruzen was enjoying the looks on the faces of his former teammates. To add into their dismay, he added with a chuckle, Of course, I should have realized this when I appointed him as a Jonin. Homaru and Koharu's faces showed horror by now. They had completely overlooked the fact that a person becomes eligible for a head of clan position upon becoming a Chunin or Jonin. They were too biased against Naruto, too confused and trying to keep him under their control that they lost sight of other things. They should have realized this the moment Hiruzen appointed him a Jonin. Naruto was already clan head long before this discussion was taking place. It just needed to be officialized. Hiruzen took entirely too amused. It seems you need a moment, Homaru and Koharu. Perhaps you would like to step outside the room? Me and my students have a few things to catch up on. The elders walked out of the room in a daze. The three of them finally let loose their chuckles, or in Jiraiya's case, laughter. Jiraiya said as he calmed down, "It's about time someone taught them a lesson." Hiruzen smirked as he looked at his student. "Looks like I made the right choice in choosing my successor. You know you're worthy if you're able to outsmart them." However, the atmosphere turned serious when Jiraiya brought up another concern. "However, we must not overlook the consequences of Naruto revealing his heritage." Hiruzen and Tsunade immediately caught on to what he was saying. The former had been worrying about this for a long time. Minato's enemies now had a new target to focus on. If they couldn't get revenge on the Yondaime, they would take it out on their son. Get this to 500 likes for the next part. Roll the outro.
Wanted a bitch who was on the move, but you on a goddamn late. Got that one in my bed and she just wanna sleep. Fucking up all of the sheets. She only wake up to eat. Do this shit every week. Like why you do that? Crying you wanna be great, but sleeping until the next day. Why you do that? Don't got that much in the bank. We go out, she order